All right, let's get this baby started.
Good evening, check. I gave her that. Hello. Check. Good evening, guys. Thank you so much for coming to the October 11th, 2022 business meeting. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you guys so much for coming. Just so you know, we are joined by 6 of our Board of Education trustees, our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Timothy P. Harney, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Finance, Dr. Ted Fulton, our District Interim Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations, Mr. Luis Frontero, our District Legal Counsel, Mr. Edward McCarthy from Ingram and Smith, our District Clerk, Ms. Suzanne Benetti, and as always, our Student Rep, Ms. Emily Denton. As always, there are 2 opportunities for the community to participate during the Board of Ed meeting. The first is just before the board takes up its agenda, and the second follows the disposition of all agenda items. If you'd like to speak tonight, we ask that you come to the podium. There's a mic there. If you could please just state your name. If you're from Bayport or Blue Point, you must be a resident of the school district. If not, you must be voted in by a majority vote of the board. As always, in the back, all of our meetings are live streamed and posted thereafter to the district website. And as always, you can always follow Dr. Harney at BBP Soup on Twitter. Or you can follow the school district at BBP Schools. If you'd like a copy of any of the presentations tonight, we have them, some in the front, and I know there's someone walking around by our famous security guard back there. So he would love to talk to you, love to have a handshake and high five, and he will help you out. Before we open it up to the superintendent report, we're going to open it up to any community members for any new or old business. Not hearing any, we'll turn it over to the superintendent. Dr. Harney, how are you?
Welcome, everybody, tonight, and thank you, Mr. Miller. Doing well, thank you. Just a couple of things. I'm going to save most of it because we do have a pretty full night tonight, just so we can put a couple of things so we can plan for the evening. We have Mike Leone from our auditor's office here with us tonight, who's going to give us a brief report on the closing of the books for the 21-22 school year in a few minutes. Then I will be doing an enrollment update for everybody here tonight. And then Dr. Fulton will just give an update. If you remember, we did a quick ARP presentation. I want to say it was either May or June. We need to do an update on one page and one item that we're switching around, and to do that, we have to do that publicly. So we're going to do that tonight as well, as we're going to do this. And we're going to try to get to the Yankee game at some point. We're going to try to do that as well. All right. Just a couple of things that's going on is obviously we had all of our parent-teacher nights that were very successful over the last couple of weeks, our open houses, I should say. So thank you to our building principals and to our staff at those buildings for all that they have done. This weekend, exciting, we have homecoming this weekend. So in the morning, we'll have our Hall of Fame breakfast, and then obviously the parade, and then obviously the game. So we're looking forward to that. And a lot of the schools this week are doing like Spirit Week. We also have our middle schoolers, which we're happy to say that will be going back to Frost Valley. So that is happening. So a lot of good things are happening this week. Also, about a week or two ago, we had a parent presentation. If you remember, director of Same Here, David Heimowitz, had done a presentation, did a very nice job, really spoke to the families and the parents about things that they can continually do, and really it's about questioning their children. So that was really informative. Just so you can put it on your calendar, he's going to do another one for us. Not the same one, it'll be something different, which will be November 9th. So we're looking forward to that. With that, I'll save everything else for the upcoming presentations.
Thank you, Dr. Harney. At this time, we'll turn it over to Ms. Denton. How are you tonight?
Good, thank you. Good evening, and thank you again for having me. I think I can safely say that our year is underway now that we're in the midst of homecoming week, one of our most spirit and pride filled weeks of the year. The high school and middle school are known for their themed spirit weeks. This year at the high school, today was Decades Day, tomorrow is Pajama Day, Thursday is Hawaiian Day, and Friday is the annual Blue and Gold Day. Friday morning during first period, Mr. Haas will be hosting a senior breakfast for 12th grade students. BOCES senior students will have the opportunity to grab breakfast before the bus leaves the high school. Both schools will be holding pep rallies during the school day on Friday to celebrate the parade and game to follow on Saturday. The homecoming parade will be starting at 11 a.m. in front of Blue Point Elementary. The game against Babylon will start at 1 p.m. at the high school. Dress in your best blue and gold attire and come out to support the Phantoms. We hope to have a great turnout as we've had in the past. Tomorrow morning, 9th graders will be participating in a guidance activity, 10th graders will be taking the pre-ACT, and the 11th graders will be taking the pre-SAT. Both tests are administered to prepare students for the official ACT and SAT tests typically taken before college applications are submitted. There is an alternate bell schedule that was sent out this weekend. 12th grade students, aside from BOCES students, are not to report to the building until 11:19 or the start of the alternate fourth period. Senior students with a fourth period lunch do not have to report to the building to tap out and can enter the building to start their day with fifth period. For the duration of next week and the following, the high school Interact Club will be hosting a supply drive for a local animal shelter. Collection boxes are located in the main and gym lobbies. Various accepted pet supplies include, but are not limited to, dog, cat, and small animal food, litter, bedding, toys, treats, paper towels, etc. The high school varsity soccer team and varsity volleyball team are hosting raffle basket fundraisers in the lobby during lunch periods this week. Be sure to stop down, purchase some tickets, and earn yourself a chance to win a prize. I'd like to wish luck to each and every one of our seniors that are applying to schools and scholarships as the beginning of early action dates start approaching. And to all the parents of these students, I promise we're just as stressed as you are. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, Ms. Dent. We appreciate that. Very thorough. Any questions from trustees? Not hearing any, which you guys have all been waiting for. We have a audit presentation from Mr. Michael Leone from Cullen and Danowski.
Everybody can hear me? Good. Today's lotto numbers are, no, I'm only kidding. I always wanted to do that. My name is Michael Leone. I'm an engagement partner on the external audit. I'm here to report in summary form the financial results. I did meet with the audit committee about an hour ago, and we went over things in detail. So I'm happy to report that we issued what is known as an unmodified opinion on the financial statement. So what does that mean? That means that we conducted our audit in accordance with the professional standards that require us to. And the numbers that are reflected within the financial statements and the notes to the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. In addition, we're also required to perform our audit in accordance with government auditing standards, which requires us to look at the compliance with laws and regulations. I'm happy to report that we did that. We had no material findings with respect to that. As I mentioned, this is in summary form. I did go over this in detail. So just to give you a sense of the financial results for the year, the district did finish the year with a deficit of about $500,000. The main reason for that is a few reasons. One is they received a little bit less money in state aid during the year, about $900,000, and also the expenditures did increase during the year. Most of it for state-funded things and state requirements, state-mandated. So your employee retirement system, your teacher's retirement system, which you really can't control those rates. Health insurance costs have just been increasing, so that was up. Special education services provided by BOCES was also up. So all in all, the result was about a $500,000 deficit. In addition to the financial statements, we also issue what is known as a management letter. And what that is just to make suggestions on internal controls and improvements. The district did have a few comments, most of them related to the prior year. Many were cleared. There are still a few that are still outstanding. And the district is working on a corrective action plan to make sure that they put things in place so that those can be rectified within the following year. Any questions?
Any questions from trustees? Any questions from community members? And this will all be posted on the website.
Thank you.
Mr. Leone, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. How about a round of applause for Mr. Leone? Thank you so much. Just as we get into the enrollment presentation, we'll turn it over to Dr. Harney. If you need a copy of the presentation, it is on board docs. There's also some in the back of the room and also here in the front. If you have any questions, Just one update before Dr. Harney takes over. As we said last time, this is the first time that the community and also the trustees up here will be seeing this presentation. So it's informational only, and no decisions are going to be made here tonight. Dr. Harney, thank you so much, and to you and to the committee. I know they met for years. I think you mentioned you've met over 30 some odd times, so we do appreciate all the time you put in regardless of what happens.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. All right, so I'm going to kind of take my time going through this. As Mr. Miller kind of alluded to in the beginning, is we've had the committee together for, I want to say it started in 2018. And when you go to the website, you'll see that we had met during that time probably over 30 somewhat times, which for a committee is an awful lot of time. So I have some members here, so I just really want to thank them for all their efforts. Because the amount of time that they've put into this, and again, we got a little bit slowed down during COVID time, but they really have stayed with it. And there's been a core group that's been with me since the beginning. So if we could just really give them a round of applause. And I'm not going to make them stand tonight, so don't worry about it. We're going to keep them all anonymous. So really, as I said, this is something we've been working with. The committee has been made up of over the last couple of years, and this is really the various stakeholders that have been part of it. We've had administrators, teachers, support staff, parents, outside educators, local businesses, which has been a pretty eclectic group, which has given a lot of personalities. One of the goals for tonight is really just to present information. As Mr. Miller mentioned early on, this will be the first time that they're hearing this presentation as well. So I will take questions as they're going, or you can have them at the end. Whichever you like, whichever you prefer is absolutely fine with me, and I'll kind of walk you through it a little bit. This is really as a follow-up to other presentations that I've done. This will now be the fourth. If you see, we did one on November 12th, 2019, January 14th, 20, and January 19th, 2022, which is, we did a quick one last year. Really, the last two that were done, the last time that I really did a large one was that November 12th of 2019. That was a large one. And then we did one a couple of months after that. We were doing some comparisons within the district. And at that time, we were just kind of giving you just information that the committee had collected. And we're going to do something similar today. And just one of the things, as we get towards the back end of this, where we started to talk about some of the pros and challenges that we ran into, a lot of it is we were just trying to do from a consensus basis. It was a committee, so everyone had different views. Everyone comes from a different avenue, which was really nice about, the group that we had made up. So everyone brought something new to the table. So we're just going to kind of share with you some of the things that we were discussing over the course, especially really over the course of the last year and a half. And at that last meeting, we were asked to go back and kind of look at a couple of things, which we'll do tonight. So this has been the premise as always. This is something we've talked about. This is something you actually see within our budget presentations. It's really about principles that we're kind of trying to follow by. Expectations, high expectations for students, providing as much opportunity as we can, and provide the support required for our students to be successful. That is going to be one of our ultimate goals and really became part of the things we really started to think about as a group. And over the course of time, this is some of the things that we started to do, right? So we had done 3 different demographic studies. The same person from Applied Data Services did all 3. So we were very consistent in doing that. And a lot of times it was due to updates or just things that we wanted them to look at. So those are those first 3 that you see up there. Facility utilization, we did once because you only have to do it once because your facility is your facility. So we did that once, and you'll see that within the presentations in the past you'll have. District mapping we had done as well, just to kind of figure out where everybody was located. And then obviously a lot of the data that you'll see that I pulled to share with the committee came from our student management system, which was eSchool, obviously. So one of the things that we started to talk about, and this really became the driving force of the last presentation and then this one again. Really, the big part of this is could we really start to do things or could we offer more to our students? And that became a driving force. If you remember, and I'm going to rehash it a little bit, at the last presentation that I had done, you saw that there was very little or not as much savings as you would thought because of transportation, if you remember. We had to invest money into transportation. That really has not changed that much, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But what we really started to talk about If we were to change things up as our enrollment is declining, and I'll show you some of those numbers, is there a way for us to be more efficient? And is there a way to offer our students more, to shift some of the services that we have? And that was one of the big things that we did not necessarily talk about the first time, that we have added it to this presentation. So that's a little bit more towards the end. So what opportunities does the change in enrollment afford the district? Is there a benefit in making a change in our current configuration so that the district can be more efficient? And what programs will be adversely impacted if we continue operating under the current model? And that really has to do with our declining enrollment. So previous presentations, again, this is just to kind of bring everyone up to the same page, is reviewed enrollment data, past, present, and future, which we still have in here. Compare 3 configurations. That's what we had done the last time, if you remember. We talked about 3 K5s, 2 K3s, and a 4-5, and then a 1 K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The committee continued to do that, and then it was what fiscal efficiencies might we have? So those are the things we had talked about. Really, that was that November 2019 presentation. All right, and then from there, we were given a charge from the Board of Ed, comparison of the school district data based on enrollment, which we had done that January of 2020. Then we did re-examining district lines and re-examining configurations. What you're going to see in a little bit is those last 2 didn't really change some of the concerns that we had, whether we changed the lines or re-examined configurations. But we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go forward. So I'm just going to do the same thing as I did in the past. This is a little bit more recent enrollment data as we're going through this. Now, if you're truly a numbers person, and I am, this is stuff that you're going to see. And if you go through from slide to slide, sometimes you'll say, hey, how come this number is a little bit different than this number, even though it was the same year? Sometimes it had to do with the time I was pulling the information from the system, though I'm using the same year. Or sometimes it had to do with I was pulling it from BEDS data, which is something we have to report to the state. And some of it comes from our student management system. So for a numbers, for a statistical, it doesn't change anything, but you might see differences in 2 or 3 numbers by 2 or 3, 4 students at times. That's possible if you're going through this. But basically what we did here is just quickly take a look at, this is just historical, and the first couple of slides are going to give you some of that, all right? So this is the graduating classes. So in 97, 98, it was 136 up there. And then obviously in 21, then at times you saw a peak of where we went up as high as 213, and then 2022, 23 is 163. The reason I want you to see this is because as you start to see the next couple of years, that number is going to stay similar to that or reduce, okay? As we talked about enrollment, we've been doing this now for 4 years, at least with myself, been doing it for 4 years. We've continuously talked about the enrollment changing at the elementaries. Well, now those numbers that were at the elementaries are at the middle school, and in the next couple of years, they're going to move to the high school. The biggest thing, the easiest way for me to explain it to you is this. Typically, we're having around, I'll use the number 180, I'm just going to, for argument's sake, we're graduating 180 students thereabouts, and now every one of our kindergarten classes is coming in somewhere around 120 to 135. So if you're just doing math that way, that's a difference of 35 to 45 students every single year. My prediction is we have about another 4 years of that is what's happening. So you're not going to see much change in the elementaries anymore because those are all at 130 or 100 and whatever it may be. Middle school, we're about through 7th grade, I believe, right now. So they'll have 1 more year, and then we'll go through a couple of years of the high school, if that makes sense to you. And that's really what this next slide will do. So these are your kindergarten enrollments. So back in 2011, if you're thinking about it, right, when we were graduating, right, at that time, 2011, 189 was graduating in 2011. The kindergarten class at that time was 172. Very similar. Okay, now what you're seeing is we're graduating, and now these are the classes that are coming in now. This was the largest of the years, but as you're seeing, 130, 120, we had 118 last year, 132 this year. So that's kind of why I'm saying we'll probably be somewhere 130, 140 thereabouts is my guess as we're going forward. So that's the kindergarten enrollment. These are the two just up against each other. And this just tells you what's going on. So the top line is basically the graduating classes from 2011. So I just did a snapshot of the last 10 to 12 years. And then here you have what the kindergarten classes are. And that's where you keep seeing that, the difference of, depending on the year, 30, 40, 50 students, and that's why you continuously see the enrollment dropping as a whole, if that's making sense to people. People always ask me, so is things changing? Are we losing students to the private schools? That is not the actual case here. So we just have that on here. This was a slide from before. Our numbers have been very stagnant with that in terms of students going off to private school. And then the next one, which was interesting, is homeschool. Remember, homeschool is not home teaching. Okay? Home teaching is when we have somebody who's sick out on a medical leave, we provide home teaching. Homeschooling is where a parent decides to school their own child. We had the anomaly here. This is a COVID year. Okay, actually, these two are the COVID years. Now we've kind of returned to almost what were consistent over the years. So that's just so you have that, so people have that. Okay? Total enrollment. So this is the number that sticks out. So you started out in 2011-12 at 2470, and now we're at 1851. And that number is I updated as much as today. This is not counting your pre-K students, because remember, we're doing everything K-12. So I'm being as consistent as possible as I'm doing that. So that is over that course of those 10, 11 years, a decrease of 619 students, 25% roughly. I'm predicting over the next 4 or 5 years, probably another 100 to 120, 150 thereabouts, depending on the graduating size to the kindergarten size, if everything continues the way it was going. Okay? Enrollment by elementary schools. So if you're looking at the schools, so here years ago, let's go 10, 11 years ago, Academy was 436 and Sylvan was 408, Blue Point was 260. Blue Point, in all honesty, has not really changed that much over the course of the years. Academy and Sylvan have dropped tremendously. Okay, if you're looking at percentages again. Okay, Sylvan is at 408. As of today, it's 254. Okay, which is really what Blue Point was 10, 11 years ago. Okay, Academy was 436. They are now 307. Okay, hence one of the reasons people ask, well, why did we put the pre-K at Sylvan? We had the room for the pre-K there. So that was one of the things. Also, when we were talking about this years ago, and we started to talk about pre-K, we kind of were hopefully looking at this in terms of how we could do pre-K using our staff, which is something we planned for 3 or 4 years ago, knowing some of this information that we've been working on over the years. So that has been very helpful. So here what you see is the middle school and high school. So middle school in 11-12 is 612, 398 now, okay? And that will probably drop just a little bit more because I think there's 1 year left, okay? And then the high school you're seeing has really been it's down over 100, but now what you're going to start to see is some of these grades. So this will probably drop to below 600 is my guess over the course of the next 4 or 5 years, or even less. So just to give you that. And this is the projections over the next couple of years. So what you're seeing is the grade class sizes of, okay. Now what was interesting, this year, for whatever reason, and I don't know the reason, the prediction for this year, if you go back 5 years ago, majority of the time, actually almost every year, the person who had done the projecting for us was within 4, 5, 6 students. It was actually very, very close. This year, where we ended up with 133, it was actually projected to be about 160. So it came in less than we had thought by a good amounts for the first time. So that will be something that we'll continue to watch. So these are the predictions going forward. Going forward for the kindergarten years. So it's not really going to change, as I said, it's not going to really change what's at the elementary level. Okay? So this takes us back to the other question of, okay, knowing some of this information or this background information that we have, is there a way we can be more efficient as a school district while offering more opportunities to the students? And I think that's one of the things I always wanted to look at, and we've always talked about either whether it be as an admin group or a district-wise, is this an opportunity where you can do things? There are a lot of districts that are struggling with their enrollment right now, and it's not uncommon on Long Island by any means. And if anyone here is working in a school district, majority of the school districts are dropping in terms of enrollment. That's not unusual. So we started to take a look at this as where we are now. So the committee was formed in 2018, just to give you a little bit, right? At that time, we were looking at current configuration, two K2 buildings, one K3 through 5, one K1 building, 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, 5. So we were doing another. We also did two K3s, if you remember, and a 4, 5. So we were looking at all different configurations. After all the data stuff that we were doing, the two K3 buildings and the 4, 5, and then also the two K3s and the 4, 5 should be in there as well, was deemed really not valid. It didn't really change some of the same concerns that we had. So we basically said at that time is, we're not going to look at those anymore. Also, in terms of moving the lines, bless you, moving the lines basically, depending on where the students are, changes it from year to year. So it becomes a very difficult time if you're just changing the lines. So we decided at that point too, that wouldn't necessarily assist us in what we were trying to do if we were trying to look at this concept of, could we provide more opportunities for our students? We really kind of shifted our thought process from saving money, so to speak, and what can we offer or do things differently, see if we can offer more. So here you go. This is just, so you're going to get a school profile on this next page for 21-22. The reason I didn't do 22-23, if any of you who live in a school, Beds Day was only last Wednesday, so that information is being gathered right now. But so if you're looking at 21-22, and I had done this in previous presentations as well, so if you go on the website, you'll see the same slide for like 18 and 19 and 19 and 20 as well. And this is just really, all we did was take a look at things that really are reported to the state. And then we went into a little bit more detail. So for example, because all of our schools report things to the state, we started to look at that as, all right, are there areas that are concerned to us as we report things to the state? So what you have here on the top, so what we started to do as a committee is we determined that really the only two configurations that we really wanted to look at is a K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or the current configuration. So that's what this information is up here for you, okay? So this is basically telling you right now is, okay, Academy at the time this is when I did this information, this is last year now. So remember, this isn't this year, this is last year's, because I could get all the information I needed. So we had 301 students at Academy, 245. Yeah, I can't even say 215, sorry, at Blue Point, Sylvan, 262. Then what I did going across the bottom here, we didn't assign anything to anything, any building, to any school, any configuration, because we didn't go that far. We just looked at what the numbers would be going for each of the buildings, whether it be a K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And really what you see is majority of the numbers were very close as you're doing it. Then we did the same thing for AIS, because you report it. 504 you report, special ed you report. Co-teaching resource room and special ed, special class, you do not necessarily report to the state on this report, but when we were just gathering information, we wanted to know it. So that's why that is here. And then we also looked at speech, OT, meals, which is your poverty level, and then Title I is also poverty, and then ELL students, English language learners. So again, these are some of these. And what you can see obviously here, if you were just to show out a couple of things, is if you were to play around with the configuration, you would really start to even things out a little bit more. AS would be a little bit more evened out. Special ed would be definitely, because we have co-teaching right now in Blue Point, along with some of our special classes, and that being the smallest building, just from a percentage standpoint, you can see how the percentage is much higher at Blue Point Elementary. Okay? So this one, as you're doing this, is I was able to do this for 2021-22. One of the things that often we're questioned on is class size. So here what I did, and we did for the committee, is this is what last year was. This top box was. So basically what this is, if you're doing this and you're following along with me, the first area here, sorry about that. Okay. So the top box here basically talks about, I'll use this one. So at Academy last year, there were 54 students, 3 sections, 3 classes, 3 teachers, whatever you want to call them, okay? And then down here says, okay, kindergarten divided the 3 into the 54, so it's 1 teacher per every 18 students. That's if you're following along with me. So we did that for each of the buildings. So last year, we had 18 sections at Academy, 12 sections at Blue Point, and it's always been 12 at Blue Point. It's always been 2 per grade, always been, okay? And then Sylvan was 18. Then, if you jump to, let's say we had a K1, 2, 3, 4, 5 building, what would the class size look like that? That's the idea of the second one. What I did with the second one, only because this came out of a committee recommendation, some of these numbers were a little bit inflated because we were still trying to keep class sizes lower last year due to COVID and trying to do some spacing. So I said, okay, let's do the same. I don't know why I keep doing that. Sorry about that. Let's do the same. Let's use class sizes similar. So this is what we did. And I said, okay, there'd be 44 sections. So that means really there'd be 4 less teachers or 4 less sections if we did K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, still using somewhat of COVID numbers. Okay? Then I said, well, let's say we're not using COVID numbers. That's what the bottom one is. Well, then it would drop to 38 sections. And that would be class sizes of still 20 and 21, which is very appropriate, very appropriate. So that's what this shows you, okay? So again, just to reiterate, because I know people will ask questions about this, the top box is what we had. The second box is we said if we had a K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we did it with COVID numbers, where the numbers, class sizes were 17, 18, okay? And then here we said, all right, let's do class sizes of 20, 21. What would that be? How many sections would that be? So that's what that is. Then what this slide does is it does a comparison side by side. So the 3 columns here. Don't worry about the top. This is just up here, so don't get hung up about the buildings here. All this is up top here is basically saying that this is how much room are in the buildings. The one thing that did come out of all this is we know we would not be able to close a building, even with our current numbers. So that was something that did come out of this, so people are aware. What these 3 columns are underneath, I'll call it brown, under here and here is, okay, this is if we had the current, this is what we lived last year. This is the 3K5 buildings. This is that middle column. This is, say we did K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just because people want to see the fiscal stuff, so we still did it, okay? That's what that one is. And then the next one is, if we did it without the COVID numbers, this is that bottom box, what it would look like. What we did then go into further, so here you go, and I'll just go through a couple of columns just to get everyone on the same page. So here's the transportation. This is what transportation actually cost last year. This is what it would have cost if we had a K1, 2, 3, 4, 5 building. So it's about $500,000 more. I'm just going to round numbers, okay? Then what you see is class size. So last year, our class sizes varied across all 3 buildings from 12 to 20. That's what they were, okay? If we did it, a K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, every class would be 17 or 18. If that was with COVID numbers, if we did without COVID numbers, it would be 20 and 21. Here you go again. General ed sections, 48, 44, 33. Then we went through every program, almost every program, and we just kind of broke it up. How many speech teachers would you need? How many psychologists would you need? How would your AIS look? All these type of things. So this is what we're talking about is if we were to do something else with a different configuration, with the use of this other staff, what could we possibly offer? And that's something that we'll talk about a little bit of a further conversation. And that's where the whole concept of what opportunities might be available for our students if we were to look at something different. The bottom number is just the number. And again, these are all my estimates. And this is one of those things that some of it is done off of average salary for a group. It's not 100% accurate, but we'd want to at least attach something to it. It's the same way that I did it 3 years ago. So the mathematical approach is the same. So basically what it's saying is, all right, we spent about 12.1 last year, okay? If we did K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's about 11.9. Really not much of a difference. That's what I'm telling you. It's not much about the savings right now. It became more about opportunities. And then this one was about $900,000 less. Again, a lot of it be eaten up by the transportation. But again, is there something else that we could offer there? We did the same thing for 22, 23. So this is this current year. So same idea. This year we did reduce sections, okay? And people had called me about it. People had called about why did we go, I'll use Sylvan was an example. Sylvan, we went from first grade where we had 3 sections last year to 2 sections this year. And the reason being is we were moving away from COVID numbers and those 2 classes still only have 18 students or have 18 students, which is a very good number, okay? But what you see, and this allowed us, if you're looking at the math here, we had 45 sections currently right now, K5. Now, if you remember, last year we had 48. We have 3 now pre-K. So those 3 teachers, which is something we had planned for, now are doing the pre-K. So that's where that staff is. So again, because of declining enrollment, we were able to offer another opportunity. The opportunity was for our pre-K students that we could basically fund with our own staff or educate with our own staff. Okay? This is what it would look like, same idea. This is this year, if we were to do a K1, 2, 3, 4, 5 building, 13 sections, 13 sections, 13 becomes 39. And if you're looking at the class sizes, 19, 20, 20, 21, 21, 20 across the board. Now, for my own pieces, this year is we started this year up here. We actually had 2 less sections up here in the beginning. For Academy, we originally only had 2 sections of kindergarten based on numbers, and Sylvan, I want to say it was probably August 20th. If any of you have a kindergartner, we ended up opening up a new section in each building. Basically because we have them spread out across 3 buildings. That's really what happened here. Then we did the same thing here. So this is that same one you saw before. Again, ignore the top. This is just how much can be held in a building. Here is Academy, Blue Point, and Sylvan. Transportation this year, obviously we've added transportation, is just under $1 million. If we went to a K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it'd be about $1.5 million. Okay? Then everything again, class sizes 16 to 24, that's what we currently are working under. If we had the other model, it'd be 19 to 21. And again, did everything across the board and what it would look like. And again, if you go down to the bottom number, you're looking at a difference of 10 different staff. So what could you do with that staff? What are other things that you might be able to offer? From a monetary standpoint, again, it's not huge. 12.5 is roughly the number there, almost 12.6. And here it's about 12.2, 12.250, thereabouts. So it's not a huge savings. That's why, as a committee, we kept talking about is we're not going to talk about the financial piece as much. We're really going to talk about what else we can offer. So this is where we went next. This is very subjective from whoever was on the committee. So you're going to look at it in your own packet there. Some of you are going to agree with us. Some of you are not going to agree with us. Some of you will come up with your own. We as a committee, we had to come up with a consensus. So I'm talking to you from a committee standpoint. Even we had large discussions within our own, okay, with our own group. What we did is we kind of broke it into what we considered 4 themes: academic, social, emotional, social, emotional, efficiencies, and then community. So I'll go back to the beginning. So I'm not gonna read you every single one of these. I'll just explain to you how we did it, because you have it, and that's why I wanted to print it out for you so you had all the information. So just give me half a sec. So again, so this is what we were doing as a committee. So what we tried to look at things, okay, from an academic standpoint, if we were to look at the 2 configurations, now this is something we did not do the last time around. And then we started to figure out, okay, if something became a challenge, is there a way that you could turn it into a pro? So we started to think about that. So, for example, academic pros, okay? Again, I'm gonna say it 1,000 times only because it is our committee. This is just really, it's totally up for debate. And there are other things that you'll think of that we said we wanted, our list could have been hundreds and hundreds, but we wanted to bring in what we thought were the most prevalent at the time. Fewer transitions always comes up. You're going to see fewer transitions in here on probably each of the next couple of slides, whether it be social and emotional, whether it be efficiency or community. So under the current configuration, we gave it an X. The X basically means that for that one, that's a pro. There would be fewer transitions, obviously, if we were to remain in the current model. And then under the K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you do not see an X because obviously that then should show up as a challenge later on, more transitions. So that's kind of how we did this. All right, so you'll see here from an academic standpoint, could allow for cross-grade projects. Okay, and here's just an example, the K3 and the grade 3 buddies. You wouldn't be able to do that necessarily. You could do a two-grade project, but not necessarily, all the grades. Then you go 4 or 5 building allows for greater collaboration among teachers of those grades. One of the things that continuously came up, whether it be curriculum, whether it be opportunities, whether it be field trips, whether it be professional development, the K1, 2, 3, 4, 5 model, those usually fell within the area of being a pro, okay, because you had everybody in the same building at the same time. We talked about in here support areas, we'd be able to offer more support. Here's one of those things we were talking about from an opportunity. So, for example, if you were to do special ed in the 3 buildings or AIS in the 3 buildings, you could offer more support in that sense of, for any of you who follow special ed, there's a continuum of services. Right now, for fiscal reasons, we cannot run them in every single building. But for example, if you were to do a different model, you could do resource room, you could do co-teaching, you could do self-contained or special class, all in the same building. You could probably do different various reading programs. And you'll say, well, why can't you do that now? You can, it just means then you're going to invest more because what you do in one building, you'll have to do in all 3, as opposed to if all the students were together, it might just be for that one building. So that's kind of what some of our rationale and thinking was. So that's why you'll see possibilities for more supplemental staff programs, such as one of the things we might be able to do is take one of those staff members and maybe do a science program for our 4th and 5th graders, where we have a science lab set up for them. That's an idea. One of the other things we talked about was maybe there's a coding opportunity that we could do for our students using a staff member. So these are the things that we started to think about as, hey, is there more opportunities from an academic standpoint? All right. So I'm not going to go through them all because I don't want to read them all to you, but you kind of get an idea. From the challenges, obviously one of the biggest things is the number of transitions that continuously comes up. Right now, we talked about K5 could have inconsistent experiences, and that is something that is often shared with myself or Dr. Fulton's office. Is something that people often share with us is, how come it's happening in this building and not the other building? So those are from the academic. The socially emotional, I'll just flip over to the next one. And I will definitely take questions as we get through this. Okay? Socially emotional. Here you see in the beginning of pro is children benefit from interactions with older and younger peers. Where here you really would have 2 grades together, so you would not necessarily see that. So we'd have to think about, okay, what are ways that we could do that then as a district if we think that is important. More opportunities to have a wider peer group. So this became a pro and a challenge. One, you should have more classes in the same building. So for example, students would not necessarily always be with the same students. So for example, right now if we have 2 or 3 sections or 2 classes in each of the buildings, if students are having difficulties with each other, sometimes it's difficult to get them to move them and separate people if we need to. That is something that we viewed as a possible pro here. Also talked about bullying in that sense, and that would be helpful there. Potential to develop positive long-term relationships, something where we'd have to figure out a way where, for example, if staff were with students the entire K-5 experience, where they get to really know the students, how would you do that in a K1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Well, maybe you would transition some people with them. And I'm just tossing that out right now. So these are ideas that we would have to continuously take a look at. Talked about the building culture versus a community, where right now you have kind of your neighborhood schools, where the neighborhood school would become more of a community school because you'd be pulling from the entire area. So depending on what side you sit on, some will say that's a pro, some of you will say that's a challenge, and that's kind of one of the things that we continuously discussed as a committee. Probably more moving of staff on our part. Hurt students' social and emotional well-being by imposing transitions and being among different buildings with unfamiliar teachers. And that's one of the things that continuously came up that we said, okay, how would we combat that if we were to do anything differently? As I said, I'm not going to read you through it, but that was kind of the idea of social emotional. The efficiency one is a lot of the same stuff that you heard us talk about. The efficiency one is, in terms of the provision of services, we could offer possibly more services. We could create a path for planning time with curriculum and specialist teams. We could do more professional development, curriculum writing within the same group. Potential for greater staff, greater level cohesiveness. Opportunities for collaboration amongst the grade because now they're all in the same building. Challenges. Due to increasing numbers, the existing configurators cannot be maintained, not sustainable. We talked about here in terms of the current model, in terms of some of the services that we offer, that you heard me already speak about in terms of AIS or special education, or for our ELL students. I don't want to forget that. A lot of this in the efficiency area, you're going to see a lot of the same ones. So I'm not going to read you through them all, again, especially since you have it all in front of you. And then the last one, which was really the community, was we were trying to take information as the impact it would have on the community. Would it have an impact on the PTA was a discussion. Would it have an impact on obviously dropping students off? That is something that is being considered. As I mentioned before, community school versus a neighborhood school. The building, the culture, with all the students together, the schools may be more diverse. Maintaining traditions, okay, within the buildings. K-5 siblings who are able to attend the same building would not necessarily be. So these are some of the things we talked from the community. Also, we talked about, in all honesty, the stigmas that the different schools have, the competition between the schools. We talked about, the community. What would they be open to? So these are all things that we talked about in this area in terms of pros and challenges. Oh, sorry, I didn't move that on. So that's really what we've been spending the last 14, 15 months on, whether it be the numbers or really those 4 sheets, those 4 areas that we started to look at. And those pros and challenges was, again, in the beginning, it was much more cumbersome, but we tried to kind of put things together that we felt that went together. And again, trying to come as a consensus to say, all right, at least as a group, this is what we're going to put forward so people would have all the information. And that was really our goal for tonight, is to give you the information. Moving forward, my committee will be happy. We are done. The committee is done right now. So they'll be very happy. Really, the idea was to bring forth information. Things that we would have to do is, one is, again, everyone's hearing this for the first time, is probably the suggestion would be I will take any questions, and then really take this information, and I'll take questions the next go-around as well. On the 26th when we're back together, is really try to figure out is what is important that you'd like to bring forward. One of the things we do have to do, though, and I've spoken about this in the past, whether we make a change or not, we do have to take a look around where our special education programs are. That is something. As I said, we have a large special ed population in our smallest building, and that building is going to be cited if they're not going to be cited this year. There's no doubt about it, just because of sheer percentages and numbers. So that is something that we will have to do is going forward. And then really, for here, I'll take Board of Ed questions, and then I'll open it up to the community for questions.
Thanks, Dr. Harney. Let a round of applause for Dr. Harney and the committee. We appreciate it. Open it up to trustees for any questions for Dr. Harney. Ms. Pignataro.
I had a question related to staffing, so I don't know if you can necessarily speak to this because I know we're not talking nuts and bolts yet, but couldn't help but notice the lowering number of FTEs with the possible new configuration. So, first of all, though, I'm sorry, I should open by thanking you and the committee because this is a mountain of work and this is an incredibly comprehensive presentation, so thank you for that. But my question is, in terms of staffing reduction, is that something that you'd anticipate happening by attrition, or would the district be looking at potentially accessing staff if we were to move to a different configuration?
I'm going to answer that yes, yes, and not sure. And what I mean by that is as we continued to look at this, we never really looked at it again from our reducing staff. We looked at how could we reallocate and then try to offer more for our students. That was really where our focus was. Now, as you go through it, it's always tough because you're trying to do this without, not saying I'm doing it in a bubble, but you're just trying to figure out how to place things. So I would think, imagine is within a couple of years as we have more and more retirements, would I at that time say to you, I would look at to see if there's other ways that we can do savings from a budgetary standpoint? I absolutely would. Again, but it wouldn't look to basically remove something that we just put in either. So we would try to see how we were doing that. And until you really play the whole thing out and you have the students where they are and everything, it's tough to say is would there be accessing. Really is, again, our whole goal and focus really was, and I'll say from the beginning, is really to reallocate and see what else that we could offer that would kind of just continuously build upon the great things that we already do. That's why I just gave you a couple of ideas, but we were just talking about a couple of things that, hey, might be really interesting.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
Not so much a question, just I guess an observation from the past 7 years. So for this, every summer we get to the end of the year and I've seen consistently the lack of predictability with staffing. Constant shuffle of got to move this teacher out of this elementary school to that one, which gets parents upset. I've seen got to hire this year 3 elementary school teachers in 1 week because the class sizes predicated that. And also seeing just not being able to nail down what our class size is going to be at. Basically, the biggest thing I also have observed is parents not being happy about the inconsistency of class sizes. I've seen class sizes as low as 12 in some classes and as high as 24 in others. It doesn't make any sense to me how we're going through that. So that's the biggest observation I've seen, is not being able to kind of be consistent with those type of things, staffing and class sizes.
Yeah, I mean, we clearly saw that again this year where, again, it was the second to last week of August, where our kindergarten numbers were at a certain piece that I was really just waiting on any additional enrollment, and it happened then. And we ended it up at a section at Sylvan and Academy. But if we were in a different model, that would have never happened because it would have just been an addition of one other student to one of the 6 or 7 sections. So that is definitely something that, since the time I sat, was the assistant superintendent, and it's every single year that we're continuously trying to figure out what class sizes are going to be. With exactly what you're talking about, Blue Point is always Blue Point. It's always 2 sections, and it's always 2 sections if there was 30 students or if it's 46 students, right? So it's 2 sections of either 15 or 23, where the other 2 schools fluctuate a little bit more. So,
Any other trustee questions? Ms. Conley?
I'd just like to reiterate, thank you for your work, committee and Dr. Harney. I'm looking at slide 22 and just wondering if a possible move to grade clusters would impact our Titles 1 and 3 funding, because right now that's all at Sylvan.
yeah, so probably what it would do is, how the Title I works is you have to be a certain percentage, and it has to do with your free and reduced lunches. So it would probably spread it out. I don't think the money would change. I think if anything, it might be have more access to some of the other buildings, is my guess.
Our allocation would not change, and I would also note that we've seen a significant reduction in Title I funds. From when I entered the district, we had received approximately over $200,000, And now for Title I, we're down to approximately, this isn't the exact number, $77,000. So we've received quite a reduction in Title I just in the past couple of years, but for configuration-wise, it would not impact our funding.
Thank you, Dr. Fulton. Any other trustee questions? Mr. Johnson?
I also just want to say thank you to you and the committee. This has been together for almost 5 years, maybe 4 years. That's a long time, a lot of work, and good information. I think I just remember when I first got on, we were looking at this with Dr. Butera, and it was a big concern, the enrollment decrease, and we had to look at different ways of maybe being more efficient, or looking at different ways to do this to prepare for what's been kind of happening over the last 5 years. So
I think that's why we started to shift the idea is this is an opportunity,
Any other trustee questions? Dr. Harney, what are the options for the board?
So, from my understanding, and Mr. McCaffrey, you can tell me if I'm wrong at this by any means, is from a standpoint, and then I'll take any questions from the community as well, is if we were to try to, if it was the wish of the board or a recommendation to kind of move forward with some type of change, if that was the case, we'd have to kind of know really probably before the holiday break, thereabouts. If we're going to continue to stay as we are, then just know, and I think that's where it's my job as the superintendent to bring you the information. We're going to still run into some of these things that we've been talking about for years and years. But saying that, I do think no matter what, I would come to you with a recommendation. We have to then do something with some of our other programs to figure out a way to be more efficient. So it would probably be in the area of special ed. It would probably be in the area of ELL, where we would try to do some of that. And then from your standpoint is, again, you're hearing this for the first time. Think about other questions that you may have and bring them forward to the next meeting. And then we can kind of go from there. From my understanding is, as a board, you could make a decision. We could try to do a poll, or we could leave everything as is. But that's why the committee work is pretty much done. We have nothing else to investigate. If we decide to make a move in any direction, I'll put together another group to say, okay, this is how we're going to do this, or something like that. But they've done a tremendous, tremendous job.
Thank you so much. Any community members with any questions for Dr. Harney? Yeah, if you just want to come to the mic, maybe just state your name. Bayport Blue Point. Thanks so much for coming. Yeah. Is there a mic up there?
It's not mine. Matter of fact, you can come up here if you want and just do it.
Yeah.
I was trying to.
Dr. Harney will speak loud.
Yeah, I can speak.
Hello. I'm Christine Perry. I have 4 children currently attending Blue Point Elementary. I agree. Thank you for the presentation this evening. I just have a couple of questions. I know that I may not be the majority. I am not a fan of the Princeton plan. That being said, it's pretty obvious. I have 4 children. I find it important that they are together when they can be together. The time will come right around the corner where they will not be in the schools together. And I find community to be very important. I find family to be the utmost importance in my home. My children come first, their relationship comes first, and then everything else is to follow. Their education, obviously, is wildly important. So with that being said, I was just, you spoke about how the, sorry, I wrote down some notes here because I knew I would do this. The numbers that you had up on the board there, I forget which slide it was, that you had the comparison of teachers in each of the different locations versus the K through 1, the Princeton plan. And the numbers that you had on the board went down dramatically. I think one of them, the mean general ed teachers went down anywhere from 6 to 10, depending on which slide we're talking about. The other ones kind of seem to be more consistent with maybe a little bit difference, 4 to 4.5. So your numbers at the bottom there, where they did change, I know you said transportation went up about 500,000. The numbers for the teachers, are you basing them on the teacher numbers going down? Is that where that final number includes? I know she had asked about accessing staff. So,
Transportation to 48 teachers to, 10.6 but that included everything.
okay, so that's my next question, because you had mentioned maybe not accessing teachers and relocating them, but those numbers are based on letting people go, on accessing teachers.
I never used the word letting people go.
No, I'm not saying,
My whole conversation was really about, okay, if we were to free up some staff, is there other things now that we might be able to do for our students? That's really what would be part of my suggestion to look at from a curriculum and instruction.
right, which I get that, but when you say free up staff, the staff that is now looking to be used in a different manner, they're not included in that budget, is that correct?
They are.
So I see what you're saying. Yes, you're absolutely right. So that's why I said I was really looking at the savings thing.
Okay, because, so that being said,
Dr. Harney, I can't hear Dr. Harney at home, so maybe you want to sit?
sorry.
Sorry.
So you are correct when you are saying that is if they were short those 10 staff members. You are correct.
Okay, so with that being said, the Princeton plan, I know you had on the board, it went up about 500,000. It would actually go up a lot more if we're talking 10 more teacher salaries, could be $1 million.
It depend. It would actually depend on which staff we're talking about. Typically, you're talking, in this case, it would be like if you're talking about excess, which I'm not talking about excess, right? It's usually your teachers who have less years, so that's where the money is not as much as the experienced person who's been there for 25 years.
Okay, but so the numbers would be more. So that,
Yeah,
I just,
Yeah, that's why I continuously came back, and even as a committee, we can talk about there's really not a savings here. That's really what it's not about. The only way you would see a savings is if you said it exactly that, is where you said, okay, base that number, and if it was a 10 difference, then we had to excess all those teachers, and that's not what we're talking about here.
right. Okay, and so where does that extra money come from? Is that coming from our taxes? Where are we finding that? If we were in a $500,000 deficit last year, and then moving forward, we're talking about adding upwards of over $1 million.
Yeah, I would have to do the rest of that math for you, because I did not do it.
Okay, and then my last thing was just, I know you discussed at the end there whether the board would vote on moving forward with this plan. I'm just gonna put in my vote to put it out to the community, because it's something that dramatically affects every person in our community. You know, especially, obviously, the elementary school parents. We are going to be the ones that are affected by it, and some people may love it. But I think that the right thing to do would be to put it to us so that it's a decision that is made by everybody. It's put out a vote, you know, just a regular old vote. So that's just my suggestion.
I think I did mention that you could survey. That would be an opportunity that they could do.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. What should I do with this?
He said a survey could be an option.
No, I'm saying is, when they were asking before, is when Mr. Miller was asking what are some of the options, that was one of the options I had alluded to, is that they could do a survey.
A survey being done in what fashion? How would that be done?
I haven't been given that charge yet, so I don't know the answer to that one.
Okay,
I'd have to figure it out.
okay.
Thank you so much. How are you? Thanks for coming.
Hi, Antonia Sauter, Blue Point, actually same school as Miss Perry. And that was my question as well, is I understand that the committee exclusively makes the decision, but I was wondering if there was going to be more input from the community, because I'm looking at the pros and challenges section, and it just feels that it's not weighted, so the cons to the community could be greatly more significant than the pros. I think, like Mr. Johnson, I don't know if you guys use this phrase in the military, but is the juice worth the squeeze? I mean, we're talking about completely upending something. I'm just wondering if there's a little bit more I mean, we went through this once as a community, and the dialogue was very boisterous from the community. So what is the school board's plan for incorporating the community's concerns about these challenges, or what you see as pros but I potentially see as a con?
It's interesting, and I won't answer for Mr. Miller or the board, but one of the things, even as a committee, I would tell you, just on the things on there, had different weight depending on the person. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. So what may be weighted very high for yourself may have not been for another person. And we saw that exact same thing from our enrollment committee. That's what I mean, as we were having those discussions. That's why even when at the end of this is when Mr. Miller asked really was what's the next step, says I really basically said is I think basically just people process this tonight and then let's have a follow-up to this at the next meeting so people have time to have a conversation or whatever it may be. But again, I don't want to speak for Mr. Miller, and then kind of gather more information at that point. Because this is the first time anybody is seeing this.
Fair, and the military often also uses command climate surveys, which you guys did during COVID is what I would call them. But I guess I'm just curious to the board how the community overwhelmingly potentially feels pros or cons. How does that go into your decision making?
Obviously, we always want to take the community into account on any decision made up here. As Dr. Harney said, this is the first time we're hearing it, so this is almost like a hearing for the community and for the board at the same time. I think after we open it up to the community, we'll try to give you some feedback in regards to next steps going forward. I know there'll have to be many more conversations regardless of any outcomes.
And I appreciate the amount of time because I understand that it is a problem and it's an overwhelming task.
Thank you so much, though. How are you?
Hello. Hi, I'm Beth Rotella, also from Blue Point. I only have one child, so I don't have the same issue that a lot of other families do, but I can certainly understand wanting to have siblings together. My concern basically is SEL, coming off the COVID pandemic and the outbreak of mental health issues with children and adolescents. We are going to be asking little children to change buildings 3 times, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but on one of your slides, it clearly says loss of a go-to person. So that means every 2 years a new social worker, every 2 years a new guidance counselor, every 2 years a new principal, every 2 years a new lockdown drill situation. So that's just something, that's what I had wanted to say tonight, but after the presentation, what stuck out with me is that Dr. Harney, you said there isn't a big cost savings. And then Ms. Perry also said that perhaps it would cost more in the overall, but you said that that's not a big issue, it's opportunities. Now, I have one daughter. I don't see where these opportunities would be coming from because on slide 23, you said that the class sizes would be bigger. While 21 is an appropriate number, it's still bigger than what my daughter has had. So I don't see how that's a benefit for her. You're going to lose 6 class sections. And then on slide 24, when we're talking about specials, library stays the same. Art, same. Gifted and talented, same. ELL, OT, and flex, if we can call it a flex program, stays the same. Whereas phys ed and health actually loses, music loses, and resource room loses. So I don't understand where these educational opportunities are arising that would benefit my daughter.
This is where some of the scheduling plays in. So when you see some of the reductions in the area, let me use phys ed for example. And in matter of fact, phys ed would actually, in terms of currently right now, how I projected the phys ed, I'll use that one since you brought that one forward, is currently right now, every student in every grade gets 2 individual phys eds, and then they have that common phys ed, and then they have health. That is all included in here. The difference is the number of sections, so therefore that's where you see that the change. So it doesn't change anything for the students. And a matter of fact, they would probably get 3 individual phys eds as opposed to the 2.
Well,
Which-
that's just my point. It's not going to change things for her. Do you know what I mean? Like, where are
No,
these
well,
opportunities?
you were asking me that they were getting less, and that's what I'm just saying.
Yeah.
The resource room, you saw a decline in that, basically just because, doesn't mean less students are receiving resource room. It basically
know.
just means because the students are in the same grade and in the same school.
Exactly. So
they are
they're
grouped-
less
they-
salaried
They're
people.
grouped together where now you don't see that. That's where you see those, and that's where I call that an efficiency. So there's not a reduction in those.
Right. So it's the same for the students.
In terms of that service, yes, but if you're asking me then is, and that's what I think Ms. Perry was alluding to before, is could we possibly do something else? So for example, if you had a student that was in 4th or 5th grade, one of the things the committee talked about is, could we possibly do like a science lab? Have a science teacher specifically who is for that? That's an opportunity. That's what we were talking about. We were talking about opportunities. when
And
the
of
committee was
course, you'd
talking
have
about-
to have people within that licensure. You'd have to have people specifically with certificates for that,
Correct.
which may not be currently employed, so you'd have to hire someone else.
And now we're going down a rabbit
Yeah.
hole, but for example, a K-5, the certification's the same. An elementary
Right.
certification's the same. But maybe then somebody could become a specialist in a specific area. It's just, a thought that the
Right.
committee when we were talking about.
Yeah, I just don't see the benefit for my daughter, who's kind of like a middle-of-the-road kid. She doesn't receive services. She's not gifted and talented. I don't see how this would benefit me at all as a tax-paying parent here. Do you know what I mean? That's all I had to say.
Thank you so much.
But thank you.
Thank you so much. How are you?
Hi, how are you? My name's Dawn Alexander. I am a resident of Bayport and a proud parent of 2 children at Academy Street Elementary School. I'm also honored to serve as president of the BBP SEPTA organization. Thank you to the Board of Education for allowing me to speak. I'd also like to thank Dr. Harney and all the members of the Enrollment Committee for their due diligence on a topic which has caused many of us to come out tonight. This was a tremendous undertaking, and I appreciate the thoughtful consideration and conversations you've had regarding the future of our district. While I understand that change can be scary and overwhelming for many, I believe that real change is needed to meet the needs of students in our district who require remedial support and services such as those with academic intervention services, 504 plans, and individualized education programs. It has been often mentioned that it's difficult to provide more to these students given the size of our district. I am not here to ask for more. More is not always better. In order for our children to receive better services, which is what every child deserves, we have to find ways to be more efficient as a district. We must recognize and accept that we are a small district. Therefore, we need to look for ways to provide a continuum of services and comprehensive programs to students regardless of which building they are in. Our students are not round pegs that can fit into a square hole. They require supports and services provided in their home school with diagnostic and prescriptive programs to meet their individual needs. This is the most effective way to ensure that all students get the academic support they need to maximize their greatest potential and future outcomes. Before making any decision, I respectfully ask the board to identify the total percentage of students who receive AIS services, 504 plans, and IEPs, and how much that percentage makes up the entire student body and who would be affected by this change. We have an opportunity as a district to use our resources in a more efficient manner, which will provide better, not more, for our children who deserve their needs to be met in the most thoughtful manner possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your feedback.
Thanks. I also want to thank Dr. Harney. I think everybody knows how much time you put into this stuff and, late nights and the committee. So I moved to Blue Point about 3 years ago, so I'm kind of new. My wife just spoke there a little bit ago. If you would have told me, 3 years ago or asked me what the Princeton plan was, I would have thought, that this was like, how are we going to get our kid into college sort of thing. So this is all kind of new to me. But as I'm sitting here listening to this, I'm just reflecting on where I'm from in Nebraska. I grew up in a rural Nebraska, and there's a real big problem right now in Nebraska because all the small towns are dying. And so it's really kind of horrendous in rural areas. And there's a divorce there between, places where they still have a school and where they don't. And, you know, the places without schools die very quickly. And it's in some part due to community. And, you know, I don't think you can overstate how important community is to places that don't have, let's say, the job engine like Long Island does. And community really matters. It harnesses everything. It brings people together. It helps them identify who they are. It helps them, you know, create bonds that they have for the rest of their lives. And as I'm sitting here being this guy from Nebraska, listening to you talk about this, and you start talking about, you know, efficiency, and you start talking about enrollment, I kind of got lost there because I don't see how this plan changes anything with the enrollment problem. And so you have an enrollment committee, and they didn't really address enrollment? I didn't really understand, actually. And I know I wasn't here in 2018, but it seemed like there's a logical disconnect between the issue and the solution. And it seems like you're going to adopt some solutions that actually have no bearing on the problem. And in fact, you're going to destroy some things that could be really important to this community. And I've been in communities, I know these communities, where they've taken schools out, or, you know, taken the elementary schools out of the community, or just changed the way that it functions in the community. And it doesn't look the same. It's different. People connect differently. They act differently around each other. It's just not the same. There's an old Oscar Wilde quote from the picture of Dorian Gray. It said, you know, what is it? It's, you can know the price of everything, but the value of nothing. And I feel like, Dr. Harney, that's what you've got here. You understand the price of everything, but the value of nothing in this case. You're missing the big point about what's special about Blue Point Bayport School District, at least what I've found to become very special. By splitting these things up, I don't think you're necessarily guaranteeing efficiencies that you think you might be getting, but you're definitely guaranteeing that some of the special things about the district will definitely go away. My question, I guess, to you is, what do you think will be special about Bayport Blue Point if we take kids out of the school districts, or take the kids out of the elementary schools where they can build these bonds, build these relationships? Because I know, you know, the thing is that everything's about efficiency. You know, we can make everything bigger. We can make everything better. You know, but just because you make it bigger and better and cheaper doesn't, or I shouldn't say better, but just because you make it cheaper and you make it, you know, easier or more convenient or whatever the case may be, doesn't mean you actually make it better. You know, and I think that could be one of the things in this case that I'd like you to consider. So anyway, I would like your vision about, I'd like to hear like your answer to that. Thank you very much.
I hate to cut you off, Dr. Harney. I just want to say Dr. Harney isn't here saying he wants this. He's not here saying he doesn't want this. The board and the board over the years have asked him to look into different areas of efficiencies and different areas that he thinks that they can bring recommendations to the board. And I think it's on the trustees and the community to make the decision. Dr. Harney can easily provide a recommendation as we get closer to that, but I don't think it's fair to say Dr. Harney's pushing this or not. I think he's just bringing information from the committee to the community in regards to, here's an issue at hand, here are some options that you might want to look at, but this is not something that Dr. Harney's pushing.
My apologies, I misunderstood. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much.
On a second note, is I just say, you know, I do know what makes Bayport Blue Point very special. I've been here for 15 years, so this is not new to me. I'm very familiar with the community. It's one of those things I am probably the most proud of is this community. I come from a much larger community, and you don't see what happens in Bayport Blue Point happen in many places. So to make that statement, that's the one I will take offense to, saying that I'm not sure what I know about Bayport Blue Point. I have been here for a very long period of time, and I think most people would tell you that. And I think I would also tell you that I absolutely have the interest of the students always in mind when we're ever thinking about anything. Saying that piece, I do know that since the time I was the assistant superintendent here, that enrollment has been dropping. That is a fact. There is no doubt about it. And I don't think I would be doing my job as the superintendent of schools to not bring that information forward. Because what would happen is if I didn't bring that information forward, probably in years from now, somebody would go, well, why didn't you think of that? Or why didn't you bring something forward? So all I'm doing, along with the committee, is bringing information forward, again, for the community and the Board of Ed to make a decision. So that's kind of my response.
Thank you for your question, sir. Appreciate it.
Hi, Patrick Rue, Blue Point.
How are you?
I just want to say I do appreciate that the last 4.5 years now we've been doing this enrollment committee, and I can't imagine how much time and do we know how much money has been spent on these studies so far?
That I do have. I could give that to you, Mr. Rube. I don't know it off the top of my head, but we've done it 3 times now.
Yeah, I know it's going on
Again,
4.5 years.
the first one was probably the most, and then it's a contingency and an update to it. So I could get that for you if you want it.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Did you say, can you just repeat that? How much did it cost for enrollment study?
Yeah, how much all these demographic studies, whatever.
Yeah. It's been basically 3 of them.
Right.
One was the original, and then we did 2 upgrades to it, or updates to it, I should say.
All right. Yeah, I know. November 2019, we had a huge meeting where the whole community was here and didn't want it, and we're still here. In 2011, the community was here, didn't want it, and we're still here. So, I don't know how much more time and money we need to keep spending on this committee or the board now. Yeah, I see that. I saw that was posted up this afternoon, and I appreciate that going up there tonight. Thank you. Well, I do want to talk about the committee, actually. That's a good thing to bring up. You're saying the pros and the cons are subjective of the committee. Now, originally the committee was 40 people. I tried to get on it. I was told I couldn't. There was too many other people. I know other people in the district tried to get on that committee and were told no. So I looked at the average of attendance of that committee over the last 4.5 years. The average attendance was 18 people. Now, out of those 18 people, I want to know who was on the payroll of the district on that committee. And that was 13 people on this committee that's making these decisions to give to the Board of Ed, not Dr. Harney or the administration. This is asked for by the board. So then I looked, I said, all right, let's see how many residents.
Can you just say that one more time?
I said there was 18 people that averagely attended the meetings.
Okay.
And I said that the board was the one that wanted this committee, correct? Not the administration.
I think collectively we made the decision to bring it up, but yes, I agree with that.
Okay, thank you. So then I looked at see how many people were not on the payroll that averagely attended this meeting. For 30 times, you guys have held the meeting 30 times. 5.3 people not on the payroll or at this meeting average. That's what's being told to the board tonight by the community. It's 5.3 people. So I think that really we got to consider either make another enrollment committee that has the community on it. You can't just have a majority of payroll people on it. And, to be good, still doing this for how many years? 2011, you watch the video, the place was packed with people that didn't want it. I was here in 2019 when most people didn't want it. Board chose to keep pushing it. Why? I don't know. We have COVID, so we had to put it aside. Had to deal with all the changes our students had. My kid had to go virtual for a year. Now we're saying, well, now we're going to have to maybe go to a different school next year because we got to save $300,000. Now I'm hearing there's a deficit of $500,000 when I heard in the spring there was a surplus of $1.1 million. How that happened, I don't know. Does anyone know how we are in a deficit now of $500,000? What happened to the surplus? There's no answer to that?
No, if you want an answer, and the auditor had spoke to it a little bit prior. The surplus that you were referring to that was carried over into this budget, if you remember, it was more than the 4%, which was actually from the 2020,
the 1920 year.
2021 school year, right? So that's what that was. This year, the deficit, and I've never come out publicly and said we had a surplus at the end of the 21-22 school year, because never know. We never know until this time of year because of when all the bills come in. And as if you listen to the auditor, a couple of things is, one was aid did not come in what we had expected it to be. You go off a number that's given to you. And that's something we've talked about every single year and within the budget presentation.
Right.
That was something. Two, due to BOCES costs that were on the rise, also to benefits that are on the rise. We're an operating school now this year for the past year, right, for the first time.
Right.
Those last 2 years were a little bit, obviously were different. And then obviously inflated costs, just even within transportation. I'm not talking about the transportation we added, just those. So we
Well,
also
yeah, I
had,
mean,
we
the price
also
of fuel
had,
and inflation.
we
This is
also
what
had-
I had brought up in the spring when I said maybe we shouldn't do $1 million on the lights,
just-
but we got the lights.
and we also had a legal thing where we had to take something, that we had a legal settlement as well. So that is something that was, had to do with the baseball field and safety. So those are all things that played into it.
Okay. I just can't believe this is still going on. How many years now? Since 2011. I mean, the video is still up there if you guys want to watch it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for
Rubin.
the feedback.
Yeah, come on up. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot earlier, and then I believe Beth touched upon it just slightly. Just reiterating what she said regarding mental health. I know it's very prominent in our society right now that we are fighting for our children to be stable and safe and strong and able to endure the times that they've been going through. Things that we never did as children, they are going through. And I just have to agree with her that I think switching schools every 2 years is a definite negative. I think that there's a comfort in elementary school. I'm sure everyone in here can have very fond, great memories of their foundation that came from elementary school. It's where you are set up for the rest of your life on how to learn, how to socialize. It gives you such an important piece of your life, and you are young, and you are in a position where you're learning how to socialize, and there's a comfort in having your friend who is with you throughout all of elementary school, and I think that it's a really important thing for the board to keep, in their minds, because I think that changing schools every 2 years is going to unsettle them. It's going to cause, a sense of loneliness could happen because they're not comfortable. When you get to the age of middle school, you're starting to become more independent. You're starting to make your own choices. And that's when a lot of kids branch out. They make their friends that last them the rest of their life. But that core group of elementary school kids is when they're really, really learning to do that. And switching it every couple years, I think, is not the way. Right, but you're moving them. Yes, I understand that with the friends. Yeah, I understand that. But well, it's not just the building; it's the teachers.
Thank you, sir.
My children know. Oh, I'm coming up, and I know this teacher because I see her in the hall when she walks past with my brother, and I say, "Hi, Mrs. Sintora," because my brother's in that class. And then the next year when I'm there, if I have that teacher, it's exciting and comforting. And will they know the names of the teachers in the other schools? Yes. Will they maybe be able to put a face to that name? I don't know. But when there's a teacher that is constantly in their face, they're in the hallways, they're getting compliments from other teachers, they're adding beans to their jar because the 5th grade teacher saw the 1st graders and they were proud of them for behaving in the hallways. It's that constant, they're looking up to the older children. Oh wow, I'm walking in the halls and I'm yelling and running, and I look over here and I see the 4th graders, and they're walking in a organized manner. That's encouraging for them. I think that it's important. It's an important place. And before I stop, because I'm sure everyone wants me to, can the board members just raise their hand if they have elementary age children? So 2, 3.
What was the question? Do we have children in school?
If you have children in elementary school. So 3.
I mean, the board can choose to answer if they want.
Oh, yeah, you don't have to, but I was just curious, just because I think it affects your decision if you have children that age. Okay? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming. How are you?
Hi there. My name is Christina Hodak. I have 2 kids in Blue Point. Well, one in Sylvan. She's in UPK. I'm not going to make this an opinion question. It's just an actual question. I didn't see any numbers there for UPK moving forward. So where would that fit in? Would that be a UPK 1 or 2, 3? Or how would that be considered? Are we going to continue with UPK, or what consideration was that given?
Yeah, the plan would, we plan to continue with UPK, absolutely. And my guess is it would probably be a pre-K, K1 is my guess.
Okay. Just the
Yeah,
consideration.
so we'd have
of
to
the-
look at, if that was a direction, that's what we'd have to probably look at.
Okay,
But no, the plan is to keep UPK.
keep it going. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Michelle Clune. I live in Blue Point. I don't want to speak to whether or not I agree with the Princeton plan. My daughter is in high school, so it really does not affect me. What I would like to speak to is the board and Dr. Harney specifically. I was here, my daughter was a young elementary school student the last time this came up. I was against it at the time. It was a very contentious issue for the community. What I don't want to see happen is the board or Dr. Harney get vilified over this. I do remember I've been on PTA council, numerous committees throughout my years here. And basically everything the board and the superintendent, whoever it may be at the time, tries to do to raise enrollment has been shot down by the community. Not only the Princeton plan, not only reconfiguring the schools, but also things like bringing in businesses. Bringing in businesses that will increase business taxes coming into the district has always been shot down in the community. So I'm speaking specifically to the people who were asking why the enrollment committee was talking about reconfiguration instead of increasing enrollment. There have been committees in the past, I was on one, that did try to talk about bringing businesses in to increase, and those were shot down because those businesses were not wanted in this community. I 100% agree that everybody has the right to speak to all of this in the community. However, you also have to understand that with the lowering enrollment comes lowering taxes, and eventually, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but will come with lowering services to our students. If we don't want reconfiguration and we don't want big box businesses, then we as a community also need to look at what we do want that will increase money coming into the community.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but just hearing everybody coming forward, I will always think of Mr. Haas, who always said, there's no crazy parents, there's just passionate parents. We are all passionate parents here tonight. And if you had asked me when my children started this journey, I have one in college, one in high school now. If I was against the Princeton plan, I would have been adamant against it for the same reasons you're presenting. Our emotions, our kids seeing each other in the hallway, those are all very strong for us. And I do not in any way devalue what you're saying there. Those are all very poignant, important points. What I do find disturbing this evening is we're speaking about this sense of community. I have been a Bayport resident since I'm 2 years old. I understand the community very well. But if we are a member of a community, we are concerned for everybody's child, not just our own, not just how our child will benefit. This plan may not, and I'm not saying we need to go one way or another. This is just an idea at this point. It's opening a conversation. One of the things that I noticed in the slides, and I am part of the SEPTA, and you'll notice there's a lot of us here tonight, is there were up to 70% of students receiving some sort of support service, an AIS, an IEP, a 504. Those, and what you may not know, maybe this is information you don't know, those programs are struggling. We are having trouble having comprehensive programs in those areas. So your student may not have that, but your neighbor's student does, or maybe your sister, maybe your brother, somebody has it. So looking at these things, we're just looking. We don't need to attack each other, but we do need to keep in mind that there are some benefits to this, and that we can't just think about our child. We have to think about all of us as a community. So I would hope going forward, as we have these discussions, that we keep that in mind and that we keep pushing forward so that we do have a school that's not just great for one type of child, but for everybody's child. And that's it. Thank you to the board.
Thank you so much. Any other community members? Any other trustee comments? Just one comment from the online. Someone said, I second the community vote. Just so you guys are aware. They'd like to see it put to a vote. So, Dr. Harney and trustees, I'll put it back to you guys. Would it be fair to say we're going to come back to our next meeting with any questions or concerns that we may have? Like Dr. Harney said, some of the options could be a survey, do nothing, look at more efficient ways to run special ed, and also an update in regards to the feasibility of a community vote if that's possible. Would that be fair? Dr. Harney, do you agree? So we'll bring our questions to the next meeting. Any community members, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them in or bring them to the next meeting. Both options are survey, do nothing, look for more efficient ways, look into a community vote. And just some other questions to be answered for some of the community members. Total percentage of students with an IEP, 504, and AIS services. How much has the district paid for demographic studies over the years? Any other questions the community would like answers on? Not hearing any. There is a couple other questions, but not about this plan, so we'll save those for the end. But not hearing anything else, Dr. Harney, again, thank you so much. Ms. Rowan, question?
I was just going to say that I wanted to make sure the survey was going to go out to, are we going to review a survey? Is it going to go out?
No, I just think that's one of the options that I think the board can come back next time with and say, this is the direction we'd like to move in, and this is the direction we'd not like to move in, unless the board wants to do that now. It's up to you guys. I mean, we just got the information. Yeah, you go with it. We'll wait till the next meeting and have a conversation if that's the direction. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fine.
Fair? Good? All right, Dr. Harney, again, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. At this time, we'll move on to a presentation from Dr. Fulton about the American Rescue Plan. Thank you, Dr. Fulton, for putting this together.
To call this one-slide discussion a presentation, short changes it a little bit. So we're required to continually update the community on any changes with regards to how we're spending our CRISA and our plans from the government. So when we last presented our plan, what you see in red where it says District Office Air Handler, we had planned to upgrade the HVAC and air handling capabilities of the district office. But we are now, that money is going to be reallocated to improve communication and connectivity upgrade for the middle school and the Sylvan Avenue campus to improve connectivity with wireless to help instruction. So that is the update. So you notice in red is what we're changing and taking out, and what is highlighted in green is what we're now going to be utilizing that funding for. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fulton. Any questions from trustees? Any questions from community members? Thank you so much. Moving on to the consent agenda, are there any items the board would like removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Not hearing any, can I have a motion to approve consent agenda items E, F, G, H, I, J, and K?
Second.
Ms. Conlon, second by Ms. Conley. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to the regular agenda. Just so everyone knows, there are 7 items on the regular agenda tonight. Can I have a motion to review and adopt the district-wide safety plan for the 2022-2023 school year?
So moved.
Ms. Pignataro, second. Ms. Saron, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to the next one, can I have a motion to gratefully accept the donation from BBS Architects? Mr. Johnson, second. Ms. Conlon, just want to thank you, say a thank you publicly to BBS, who most of them do live in town. This was a great, for them to donate $37,320 of schematic designs, construction administration, project closeout phases, and working with our project manager for our school district. So we are so thankful for their donation of time. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Can I have a motion to gratefully accept $500 from the Sylvan Avenue PTA? Mr. Johnson, second by Ms. Pignataro. I want to thank the Sylvan Avenue PTA for the donation for the John Shue Assembly on September 22nd. So this is just backdated. Thank you so much. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Can I have a motion to review the first reading of policy 1530, smoking, tobacco / nicotine?
So moved.
Ms. Collins, second. Was that Ms. Pignataro, second by Mr. Johnson. Discussion. Just so you know, this is updated language to reflect our current policy. Yeah, and the word vaping was not in a lot in the prior. So obviously we wanted to add that to make sure we're up to date. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Can I have a motion to review the first reading of policy 2410, formulation, adoption, and amendments of policy? Ms. Conlon, second. Mr. Johnson, just so everyone's aware, years ago, there was only one policy. If it was being reviewed and adopted, you only need one reading. We want to go back to having 2 readings regardless of what the policy is. This gives the community more time to see it, and it gives everyone a chance to have their opinions heard. Any more discussion on this policy? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Can I have a motion to review and adopt the first reading of policy 5150, school admission and residency? Mrs. Saron, second. Ms. Pignataro, any other discussion? This just updates the language to reflect our current policies and practices, incorporates policy 5153 into this policy, the enrollment of youth released unconditionally released from residential facilities. Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Last policy of the night. Can I have a motion to review the first reading of policy 8410, transportation? Ms. Conlon, second. Ms. Pignataro, any other discussion on transportation? This is just updating the language to reflect our current policies. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Open it up to any community members for any new business. How are you?
All right. It's okay, I'm coming. Yeah.
All right, good evening, friends. My name is Jessica Ulcher. I live in Bayport, and I have 3 kids in the district. I just want to begin by saying that although I am a librarian, my views tonight expressed are my own and not that of my employer. So, in late September, I was made aware of a challenge by way of a Facebook post in a community group that was started by an anonymous group member that had such a satanic panic QAnon vibe that I actually, like, my mind exploded and I had to delete the Facebook app from my phone. Essentially, the anonymous group member was concerned about a book that was available in the high school library, which in their opinion was extremely inappropriate reading material for children. And the name of that book is Genderqueer. So if you have not read Genderqueer cover to cover, the Too Long Didn't Read is that it's a memoir, it's about puberty, it's about sexual identity, and the author coming to terms with the fact that they are non-binary. And yes, it features masturbation, period blood, and confusing sexual experiences. And these are things that our students deal with, whether we like to talk about it or not. So I'm not in any way suggesting that community members are not able to challenge books that they feel do not belong in the school's library. Mistakes happen. But a challenge should be a little bit deeper than an excerpt from a book or copy and paste from a Moms for Liberty memo. If there are any Moms for Liberty in the audience tonight, please do not be offended. PEN America has found that 20% of book challenges in schools can be traced back to Moms for Liberty, so if anything, well played, guys. But just as a general issue, because this is going to keep coming up more and more, I urge you not to be swayed by parental choice groups like Moms for Liberty and others that seek to influence schools by ignoring pressing social issues under the guise that they force division. What these groups don't realize is that the fear of divisiveness is what's actually causing the division. And also, students have rights. So I don't have time tonight to talk about the freedom to read, which is a core value of librarianship. I can't read you the ALA Bill of Rights. Don't even have time for the First Amendment. And I recognize that access to free speech and books in schools is a sticky thing. Anonymous group member and others on the Facebook were crying out that the school is disseminating pornography and that there's obscene materials for children. And it's true that states have a harmful to minors obscenity statute, but that has limits too. So, brass tacks. Schools offer books of all levels in the library if students choose to seek them out. And like, what a great problem to have. A student wants a book? Oh my God. School administration should consider the students' rights when making decisions about student access to books. And any decision that restricts access that's based on a disagreement with the views that are expressed in the materials, rather than the educational merit, in my opinion, is a mistake. So in closing, I just want to say that I think students deserve to see themselves represented in books, and they deserve to have access to diverse materials available in their school libraries, and shout out to the school librarians and the staff, like especially in the high school during this time. I want you guys to know that it's really important, like now more than ever, for you to continue your work because our students need you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. There is a question in the chat regarding the same book that I think we're talking about. I just want everyone to be aware that we do have a policy for challenging materials that are provided in our district. Any concern should always start with the building principal. This book is currently under review, but I think it's important to note to the district, the students have a wide range of materials to choose from, but of course while remaining focused on age-appropriate nature of the material included. We are not in the process of banning books, but making sure the catalogs available in our schools are meeting the expectations of the school environment. Books chosen based on a review and input from professionals and literacy-based organizations in collaboration with educators. So thank you so much, but we are well aware, and this policy is under review right now as well. This book is under review. This is why we have policies put in place. So I think we are going to follow our policy in regards to starting with the building principals and going to the committee after that. And we'll keep everyone updated. How are you? Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, my name is Nicole Pignataro. I'm on Renee Drive in Bayport. Continuing on this topic, my question is about the policy that either the district, the board, whoever, when a book is being challenged, is it just simply an email sent to you complaining? Or is there a form that needs to be filled out, citations that need to be added, proving that they've read the book, page numbers, things like that? In my work district, there's a 3-page form that needs to be filled out when a book is challenged so that it avoids that copy and pasting and the bombardment of emails. Not saying that's happening, but is there a policy in which somebody would go about challenging a book here in this district?
There is a policy in place to challenge any materials. There is not a document per se, but we need to, going forward, add something in place to make sure there is something that can be signed from the community member to put something in place, more than just an email or phone call to the building principal. So that is on us. We will improve that procedure, and we do apologize.
The policy was revised just in the spring, I believe, and we had started to work on a form, and Dr. Fulton's currently working on it as right now, just so that we have that. So that is happening.
Just one more question from the chat in regards to a different book. I would just say the same question we just said. If there is something that a community member would like to challenge, please follow the policy and reach out to your child's building principal in regards to if this is a different book that we're not talking about. Thank you so much. And we will make sure we update and have a form for everyone, but the first step is always your building principal. Any other community members with any questions? Any trustees with new business? Not hearing? Oh.
Just one thing, I wanted to kind of circle back. Dr. Harney talked about the Same Here Schools presentation that was done at the end of September. I was able to attend. Mrs. Cerrone and I were here together. It was such an incredible presentation, and the only thing that would have made it better would have been having more people here to hear it. So when Mr. Heimowitz comes back on November 9th, I just hope that more community members will consider attending. I think it's great to see so many community members even here tonight engaging in the process with us. So part of the district's wellness initiatives really start with partnership with the home, and being there for those presentations. It's not just about Mr. Heimowitz presenting to you, but there were really meaningful conversations happening between parents from different schools, from different grade levels, supporting one another. So for me to be there as an elementary parent, but also as a school counselor and mental health professional, I saw the benefit both ways from being present for that presentation. So when we talk about community unity and opportunities for parents to connect with one another, I really do encourage my fellow parents to come on November 9th, if you can, to see the Same Here presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Pignataro. Ms. Conley?
Just something very light. My house backs onto the middle school, and this is one of my favorite times of year because I can hear the middle school band practicing for homecoming. There's so much childhood joy out there. Please come to the parade at 11 on Saturday and celebrate homecoming with these kids, and stay for the football game and cheer with the cheerleaders and buy snacks at the Booster Shack and enjoy your town.
Thank you, Ms. Conley. Any other trustees? Guys, thank you so much for coming tonight. We appreciate your feedback. We're truly thankful for this great community. Have a great night, and we'll hope to see you at the next meeting. Thank you so much, guys. Can I have a motion to adjourn? I forgot Mr. Krug wasn't here. He's usually the one that won't let me forget that one. Mr. Conlon and Ms. Pignataro. Yes, sir.
It was extemporaneous. Next time I'll try to be less